Ed Loudermill.
Yes, I have it. I asked my wife, and today she's my nervous.
Jennifer Clare, you have a guest today? No guest. Okay. Sorry.
I've got one.
I'll play you.
I have a sure. You have a guest?
I do. I've got a visiting Rotarian, Katie Walker, who also works with me here today from the Pittsburgh Club.
Sorry, I think I do have a guest. Who came in without me seeing. Alex Nicodem. I think this is Alex's third visit to our club, so almost not a guest anymore.
Yeah.
But welcome.
And my high school buddy, Gavin Hyman, do you have a guest?
I've got my friend and business partner, Jensen Smith, with us today.
And Matt Halfgood.
Thought I had a guest, but unless he snuck in, I don't see him either. But Patrick Brennan, I suspect, will be here in a few minutes, and this is his third visit as well.
Here we go. So I ran into Jim yesterday and said, you know, do you have your speech ready? And I said, yeah, I have my speech ready. He goes, no, it's supposed to be funny, you know, right? And I said, I've been to several of these and I had no idea. So I moved back to the area about 4 years ago, and I have a beautiful wife and 2 beautiful children, 4 and 3, and my wife still thinks that I'm hot, and I know this because as I was going out the door this morning, she passed me in the kitchen and she said, "What an ass." But seriously though, I'm Max Hilke, and I'm the director of tennis at the Chapel Hill Country Club, and it's a job that takes a lot of patience. And for example, this morning, the courts were very wet. The courts were very wet. About 8 o'clock in the morning, and a member called me, and the lady said, "Can I get a court this morning?" And I said, "I'm sorry, ma'am, the courts are wet. Can I help you in any other way?" And she said no, and about 15 minutes later, she calls back and says the same thing. "Are you sure there's not a clay court available?" And I said, "Well, you know, even if the courts were starting to dry out, it's going to take some time. You know, we've got to get the golf cart on there, and we've got to broom the courts, we've got to groom them and line them, and you know, is there anything else I can help you with?" And she said no. And about 30 minutes later, she called back and same question: "Can I get a clay court? Is there any courts available?" And at this point, you know, I'm starting to lose my cool a little bit, which I'm not supposed to do. And I go, "Lady, you know, is there a D in dog?" She goes, "Yeah, there's a D in dog." And I go, "Is there a C in cat?" And she goes, "Yeah, there's a C in cat." And I go, "You know, there's an F in courts as well. You know that, right?" She goes, "There's no F in courts." And I go, "Yeah." I believe I'm the youngest Rotarian. I'm not sure if that's a fact. 42 years old, turn 43 next month, and I'm so excited to have Eric Montross here today because, you know, when I was 10 years old, I believe you started in 1990, excuse me. 10 years old, and that's probably like the height of my fandom of Carolina basketball, and you know, you're easily one of my favorite basketball players of all time. Probably falls somewhere in between Heinrich Rodel and Chilcutt. Very good company. But so happy to be a Tar Heel as well. I played tennis at Carolina, and we do share some commonalities. My mother's from Indiana. My mother's name is Cynthia Wilhelm. My dad's name is Jim Hilke. They're still married, and she works with their father from time to time. She was one of the highest scoring basketball players in Indiana history, scoring 58 points in one half of a basketball game, and also was supposed to play in the Olympic volleyball team, but she kind of blew out her knees, and my dad wasn't, too bad at sports, but not great. And I have 2 adopted younger brothers, and she said to avoid embarrassment, I think it's better if you take Jake, your younger son, to the father-son club that you run. And it's one of the highlights of my fandom, being able to shoot a basketball at the Dean Dome, and also, probably one of my biggest achievements in all of sports was beating J.R. Reed in a game of knockout. So, but that's all I have for you today, and I'm just so excited to hear what you have to say. And I was raised by my parents, and my mom was very Catholic, and my father is Quaker, and I really think that the Quaker silent meeting is such a special thing, and instead of giving a prayer today, what I'd like to do is just have a moment of silence, and you can use that however you'd like. So. Thank you.
That was awesome, Max. Thank you. I think we might have a future Valentine's Day host on our hands right there. I like a moment of silence as well. That was a good moment of silence. Did everyone have enough silence there to get in what they wanted to get in? I got in what I wanted to get in, but I really like that too, Max. No one gets offended with a moment of silence. I have a few announcements to go over today. Chris Richard wanted me to mention that he's looking into a pop-up watch party for the Heels for the ACC tournament. It will obviously depend on where we're seated and when we play. He's also looking into a pop-up golf outing at the Chapel Hill Country Club, $75 per head. He's looking to do it on a Tuesday. Could be next Tuesday, could be the following Tuesday. But he will be sending out a DACDB email with information. We have, as I mentioned earlier, maybe some of you weren't here yet, but we have Vince Narvit over there with Brian. If anyone is not technologically savvy or does not want to go online to purchase raffle tickets, they're here today, anytime during this meeting, or just flag them over, and he will facilitate the purchase of our Teacher Supply Store raffle tickets. We are still looking for some volunteers for the day before the 5K race and the day of the 5K race. Same thing that Vince is doing right now. We're looking for people who will show up either with your laptop or your cell phone to encourage the sales of raffle tickets. If you have young children or any little pets you want to bring, that always does help facilitate the sale of tickets. So I believe the date is the 15th and the 16th. There is a sign up that's been sent out, so you can contact Brian over there or Vince right there at the back. Contact either two of those people while you're here, or send an email if you're interested in volunteering for an hour or two during one of those 2 days. Is Karen Levine here? Karen has an announcement.
Well, as many of you have seen, and the rest of you will see, I sent out a DACD message late this morning announcing that on April 14th, we will be collecting all those laptops, desktops, monitors, tablets, and phones that you don't want, and some peripherals too. We have arranged to have Cramden Institute in Durham take them. The computers will be refurbished if possible. If not, they will be shredded and the metals will be extracted from them. The good news is they really like the old bunkers. They have more metal in them. So you'll be seeing more information on it as the date gets closer, but just start going through your attic, your basement, your closets, whatever.
Thank you, Karen. Does anyone else have any announcements they'd like to make? Real quick, before I hand it off to Jim, Eric, it's great to see you here today. Eric's son and my nephew Jake are really good buddies. So I've gotten to see his son Andrew and see Eric quite a bit as those two were growing up. And just like I had a good Josh Stein story last week, my good Eric Montross story is they're playing, what was it, the 25th anniversary game at the Dean Dome? And Eric said to my brother, he said, hey, you know, I haven't played in a while. I need to warm up. You you want to get your brother and this other guy named Sandy Alexander, and we'll maybe go play some 2-on-2 down at the Dean Dome. So I'm sitting here going, man, I never thought I'd ever touch the floor of the Dean Dome. So we went down there and played for several hours and had a real fun 2-on-2 game. And I'm not going to tell you the outcome of those games, but it was a lot of fun. So Jim, I'm going to hand it off to you. And Eric, welcome. Good to see you, buddy.
We will start with the serious part by telling you that among the many blessings that we have here in Chapel Hill is that every once in a while the stars will line up. And not only was Eric Montross an All-America basketball player, went on to star in the NBA and come back here and do all of the work that he has done to improve our community, his philanthropy, his community service, what he does with kids that you were hearing about from Omar. But it is true. One thing that I do know a lot about is the business of broadcasting. And we are fortunate to be here to help us understand the games a little bit better. That Eric Montross not only was a natural talent in those things, but it was his choice to live here in Chapel Hill. And all he would have had to do would be to call his agent and say, I'd really like to go do this thing on ABC or CBS or NBC because he is without a doubt, the most effective and audience-friendly analyst in basketball in all the country. I would say that it's interesting that the one who would come maybe closest to it might be Jay Billis at Duke, but he would be at least on that level in terms of the quality of what he brings to the broadcast. And any of you, as Eric notices, I go to every game. I never take my headset off because I really want to know what's going on. I know that Eric will tell you. Now, he's good for telling the truth, but one of the things today that we are going to ask you to explain, Eric, because I am a reporter, and we always want to know whether you can face the hard truths. Now, so that we can get an EEO credit, Saul Aronson is our representative Tokugi today, and he has reminded me.
All the Duke fans left.
So Saul is age here, and he reports to us that the Duke Chronicle reported in 1992 that one of the reasons that Duke players were smarter than the dumb Carolina players and played more fair was that you slammed your head into poor Bobby Hurley's elbow to keep him from dribbling and shooting well during the ball game. And so perhaps today you might want to offer a defense of that accusation that's been hanging around the Duke community all these years. Welcome, Eric Montross.
Well, where do I start after all that nice stuff? Jim, thanks. You did get the $200 in the mail before they said all that, right? I do want to say it's really, well, actually, before I do, I think, ma'am, I don't really know you, Rob. She's at your table. Is that Karen that spoke earlier? Hi, Karen. You were talking about old clunkers, and when you said old clunkers, a lot of the men in this room got a little nervous. Were you talking about that they could be recycled? Okay, that's Max. Your jokes are really good. Mine fell a little flat. They had a longer way to fall. But anyway, but I really do appreciate being here. A lot of you, of course, we've crossed paths many times. being residents of this part of the country and this town. Dr. Wagner, always good to see you, and thank you for being here. And then my buddy Frank. So Frank is an incredible teacher. He's a wood turner. He's a master wood turner, and he has been kind enough over the years to be very, very patient with a big pupil of his. And so, Frank, it's so good to see you. Thank you for coming today. You know, I want to spend most of the time talking about things that you want to talk about. I think there may or may not be a topic of conversation regarding what happens tomorrow in the Smith Center and maybe some ramifications from the outcome of that game, or some opportunities that might come from that game. But I think a couple things that I will just quickly touch on. One, you know, I think that all of us have found things that we are passionate about, or I hope we have in our lives, and we've attached ourselves to them. One of the great lessons from Coach Smith that he shared with all of us as players was to find something outside of basketball and attach the same passion and energy to that as you do to the game of basketball. And Max and Rob, and I'm sure that there are others that have been to our Father's Day basketball camp for boys and girls ages 7 to 13, that it benefits the Children's Hospital. And we're in our 28th year this year. And so now, not only have I seen, I never really thought this through when I started, or when Laura and I started. Laura's my wife, and we started in 1995. We've got a couple COVID years in there, which is why 28 doesn't equal the number of 20. Anyway, you'll figure it out. I always have to start counting, and then I run out of fingers and have to go to toes. Anyway, so we found that there was a great opportunity to attach ourselves to the Children's Hospital here at Carolina. And Mr. Baddour knows how engaged our athletics departments have been and our teams have been over the years in trying to positively affect the children, largely the kids, who are our best fans, and we can in turn reciprocate. And so that is still near and dear to our hearts. And so that was one of the really wonderful moments from Coach Smith, was to learn about his interest in the community and for standing up for what he wanted and what he thought was right, and to do it with conviction, and also to do it in a way where you learned about it, to be educated in what you were standing up for. And so high marks for Coach Smith and all that he has done for this community and for those of us who have played under him. You know, I'll talk about anything. I can only offer opinion. I'm not shy on my opinion for the most part, so if there's something that I don't want to answer, I'll tell you, and we can maybe talk about it afterwards. But I would really like to hear what might interest you all. I mean, I think that I can go through a litany of things that I might talk about, but either you've heard it before or you may not have an interest. So I'd love to start it off and just ask, maybe go by questions, and what I find is that sometimes we uncover fun stories. So
I have two questions for you. Just picked out your shirt this morning, and can you comment on the name, image, and likeness of Captain in basketball?
I would like to make a note that those are two questions that may be the furthest apart. Because NIL is its own thing that lives over here behind the curtains, and well, I picked out my shirt today. You okay? No, it's not the wrong color. I don't wear Duke blue. Duke blue is more of a royal, ugly blue. And this is a navy. And that's a much classier color. So, by the way, am I confirming, I mean, your shirt's kind of navy. Are you? You can't be. Really?
Yeah.
When do you cheer for Carolina?
Anytime they're not playing Duke.
Well, that's a pretty good percentage. Well, thank you for that question. And it was lovely to interact with you. Yes,
They can't hear us, Ross. We ask the folks to stand when they ask the question, so that
Okay, sure. All right, okay. Well, so the first question that we were just, and I'm sorry, could you give me your name? Julie. So Julie had asked me who picked out my shirt today, and she was under the misinterpretation that it was Duke blue, but it is not. And in fact, Mr. Bedour, Navy, can you vouch for me on this?
Absolutely, I know where your heart is.
Thank you, and where my shirt is. Thank you, Mr. Bedour. The other question that Julie had was about NIL, and so Julie, there's a lot to unpack with that. You just want me to start unpacking, or do you have a specific question about NIL?
Baycott had 8 companies. I didn't know if that was true or not. That's fun. I mean, it's wonderful for him, and it's phenomenal that athletes can participate in the economy that way. I think it's quite interesting. I don't know the answer.
Sure. So in all seriousness, thanks, Julie, for the question. So NIL, I don't know if I shouldn't make the assumption that everyone knows what it stands for. Name, image, and likeness. That's the NIL. Name, image, and likeness is essentially you as a student athlete have the ability, let's say that I buy Dr. Wagner's jersey, and well, now he's going to earn a little bit from the purchase of that jersey. So as NIL was structured, it was meant to give our student athletes, and we've had, well, shouldn't say ours, sorry, I know, even though you like Carolina part of the time, I shouldn't say all of the student athletes in the country at all schools have the opportunity to go out and to market themselves and to earn some money with marketing deals, essentially. I love that model. It gives you an opportunity to go out and market yourself, and if Jim wants to set up a deal with Armando or with RJ or with Leaky, again, I'm using a lot of Carolina examples, Julie, because I know you're there with me in spirit in so many ways. Then Jim is going to be doing something that, one, benefits his company because it's going to bring some awareness or some notoriety, a bigger name maybe than what he has currently. And so he wants to give that opportunity, and in return he's going to pay for their appearance. That's great. Our women's soccer team at Carolina has a number of ladies that do that. Erin Madsen, our current field hockey coach, who is just a phenomenal player, has a lot of marketing deals. There are kids all over who have an entrepreneurial spirit that are using this opportunity to earn some wages. We don't know all of the ins and outs of this because there's no reporting. And that's part of the problem. And part of why the next part is that I take issue with, which is now NIL has become a bidding war for the best players. Whether you're at Duke or whether you're at Carolina or whether you're at UCLA or Michigan or Kentucky or Texas, or you pick your favorite school, it's largely a bidding war. Now, some schools are more adept at that bidding war than others because they've been doing it for a long time, right, Mr. Purdue? Some of us are brand new into this world because we haven't been cheating like all those other people. And so it does, in some ways, kind of even the playing field a little bit because now everybody can offer some cash reward for coming to school there. That's the part I don't like. I have no problem with people going out and earning funds on their name, image, and likeness. Good for them. She or he should be able to do that. But the pay to play is the thing that sticks in my craw a bit. So I hope that helps uncover just a few pieces, Julie. Okay, yes, sir.
Comment on the effect of the transfer pool and future of high school recruiting, college business.
Yeah, so Jim just asked, and I'm sorry, I didn't do this earlier. Jim asked, would you mind standing up when you ask a question just so everybody on the opposite side of the room can hear? So instead of me phrasing your question, would you mind being the first one to do that for folks so they can hear your question?
Can you comment on the effect of the transfer portal on college recruiting and high school players?
Well, thank you for your question. I think that transfer portal is a little bit of a double-edged sword. One, you have an opportunity to get some really good players. Two, I think that It's a disservice to coaches who kind of on a whim, players can leave and not have some kind of setback. You know, it used to be if you transfer, that's fine. If you want to transfer, if it's not the right fit, I think you should go somewhere that is the right fit. But you should not be able to go and play immediately because now it's just a carousel. I do think that for grad students coming in, you know, most every school that we play this year, I'll say most, I think it's every, but I will say most because I'm not 100% sure, has grad transfers, and that's fine. I don't mind the grad transfer thing. I think the portal is tough for coaches to predict how they're going to recruit in the future, and it's hard for them to know what their scholarships number are. And you know, one of the things that I think about when I think about coaching is that that's a mentoring. I mean, for those of you who are parents, you don't have to raise your hand, but just think about this for a minute. Did everything that you say to your children, was it always perfectly rosy and lovely? Or did at times you feel like there was a need to critique things that they were doing because you thought that that would be in their best interest as they grow up? Well, I too think that coaching is an opportunity to teach, and sometimes you don't have to be the person's best friend. You need to be the coach, and you need to be a mentor, you need to be a teacher. There was probably no greater humanitarian that I've ever been around than Dean Smith, and yet he could give a very direct message that was not demeaning, not derogatory, not nasty, but he was teaching all the time. And I think that that's really important in sports. And I think one of the things that we're seeing now is that there are some examples where schools are just not the right fit for student athletes. And like I said before, in that case, you try and help them find the right fit because it's a formative time in their life. And you want it to be a good fit, both for the school and for the player. It's a two-way street. Both of you happy equals really good things. One of you unhappy, and it starts to erode that effect of college sports. But I think we've got some issues, and I think that, not we as in Carolina, I know Julie was thinking Carolina when I said we, but I do think that college sports needs to allow coaches to be teachers without worrying that they're going to irritate a player based on a couple of critical comments about how she or he thought they were going to be better, and then they just leave on a whim. If you leave and you transfer, you should sit out a year, again, my opinion, and then you can go where you want to go. But that's just me. Hey, Karen.
Can you take a step back and explain for the few of us in this room that really don't know the sport in and out, what is the transfer portal?
Yeah, so Karen, happy to. So everybody here, she was asking, what is the transfer portal? So if you ask 10 people, you might get a different description, but essentially, let's say that I don't want to be at Carolina after my sophomore year in school, and I'm going to put my name in this transfer portal, which makes me available to other coaches and other universities around the country. So it can be used for young men or women who have expired their undergraduate 4 years of eligibility, and then they have a graduate school year, a grad year, that they can use as an eligible year to compete in the NCAA. And so, you know, those kids, those men and women who want to be a part of that would go in as well if they want to pursue that. Welcome. Yes.
Officiating is always difficult. The other night, Pete Nance set a screen. The guy behind him pushed him into the other player, and one official called blocking, whereas other officials might have seen the push behind, but they don't overrule that official. That's one question. The other one is the process by which centers back somebody down under the basket. It's supposed to be advantage, disadvantage. the offensive player is gaining an advantage by bumping the guy back under the basket. Why don't the officials call that a foul?
Okay. I'll try, Bob, to give you, I mean, I'm following you perfectly. I totally get it. But I'm going to see if we can unpack that a little bit. So, one, officiating. So the question about setting a screen, I think, there are a lot of plays in the course of a game that you could say, it's a charge, it's a block, it's an over the back, it's an undercut, it's a moving screen, it is a whatever. There are a lot of them. And I think that officials, and of course Mr. Perdue would probably be the one to answer this because he's seen so many and seen so many different sports and heard so many different examples. But I think that officials' job is to be almost like conductors. You don't want to focus, when you're listening to an orchestra, you don't want to focus on the conductor, you want to focus on the music. And I think officials who are really skilled at their job, and there are a number that are very skilled, are those conductors. They are the ones who are talking to the players during the game while the play is underway, saying, hey, Eric, don't put as much forearm, on your defense. Or you're giving too much body here, you just went over the back, next time I'm gonna call a foul. There's that little bit of coaching that no one ever sees because it's not a stoppage of play. I've never been a believer that refereeing can change the outcome of a game. I know there are some examples, and we've seen one in particular this year where it did change the outcome of a game. Julie's well aware of that. But you don't mind that I keep having fun with you. Frank's really nice, actually. Sorry?
I just want you to be discreet.
Okay, I'll be discreet. Yeah, you'll never hear me. My voice is just a little, just like a pin drop, that's all. I think that the goal is to be good enough that your team's play is the deciding factor in a game. Not because there were a few calls that could have gone the other direction and those interrupted the outcome. That's my very Switzerland glass half full, look at it, but that's just how I believe it. As far as the post play, I'm always a little surprised. I wish I could have done what some of these players are doing to each other these days. I'm pretty sure that Armando could knock that pillar over on a few occasions by ramming himself into it. Last game he got called for a charge, and he should have, because it was a charge. It's a fine line. It's hard to, and that's why referees have to give limitations from the very beginning of the game. What you don't want as a player is to think that you can do one thing in the first 5 minutes, and in the last 5 minutes, they're going to change how they're calling it. So I think it's a real fine line. It's not something that's easily explained, Bob. That's about all I can say with that. But thank you for the question. Hey, Max.
There's a lot of great nicknames out there. Air Jordan, obviously, a great one. How'd you get the nickname The Big Grit?
Oh, well. Well, thank you, Max. I thought that was part of your comedy routine earlier. Call me Big Grits. Okay. So Karen, this is another example of there being only a small segment of today's population that will care or need or recognize what in the hell we're talking about in this upcoming segment. So I will try to tell you, for those of you who don't know. It's a funny story, Max, actually. So my broadcast partner, Jones Angel, and another one of our broadcast partners who's a really wonderful writer, and if you haven't read Adam Lucas's stories, if you're not familiar, do yourself a favor. He is just a tremendous writer, and it doesn't matter, if you love Carolina or hate, it'll help if you love Carolina, but he's such a good writer. He just draws the emotion right out of you. Well, Adam and Jones have a podcast, just so I can get an idea of who I'm speaking to. How many people have listened to the Carolina Insider podcast and knows what Max is talking about? Okay, so we've got a handful of you. All right, so this podcast is based on Carolina sports. So we were at a regional tournament game in Memphis, and Adam and Jones and a few other folks were out to breakfast at a little diner in Memphis before our regional game. And I like grits, but I don't like the little baby cups of grits that you take one spoonful and you're done. I want to enjoy more than that. You can't fill this body with one spoonful of grits. It just doesn't last very long. So when our waitress came around to take our orders, I asked for grits, but I said, but I want a larger bowl of grits than just the little baby cup of grits. And she said, no problem. I said, thank you. Well, we went around on our business and we had our breakfast, and it was a lovely interaction. We like to have fun while we're out on these road trips, and she was a willing candidate to jump right in, and so we got to know her very well, and she got to know us, and we enjoyed our breakfast a lot at this little diner in Memphis. And on the way out, so the ceilings, I have to set the stage. So one, the diner is about as big as from that wall to the other side of this little back section of room. So it's small, maybe it's twice as big as this. And the ceilings I'm 7 feet tall. The ceilings maybe were 7'1". and then you had light fixtures. So there was some dodging going on. And it was an open kitchen in the back. And so on the way out, we had paid for our bill. We were walking out and we had to navigate through a few tables, and I had to navigate the headspace. And our waitress was back in the kitchen preparing the next order of food to bring out. And from the back, through kind of some shelving of where the orders are placed and all, I say to her, thank you so much. We sure enjoyed our breakfast. Maybe it was a little bit too loud for the space we were in, but she was great. So I said, thank you so much. And she looked back and she said, see you later, big grits. And so I have now become Big Grits. Nobody remembers me for Andrew and Sarah, my kids. Nobody remembers me for being a part of the national championship team in '93. Nobody remembers that awful, terrible cut that Duke gave me in that game. They just remember me as a big grit. And so thanks, Max. Yeah. All right, let me jump over here. And somebody tell me where we are on time. What's our time frame? 2 o'clock. 2 o'clock. All right, you guys are gluttons for punishment. All right, here we go.
We're playing Y-ball in Charlotte. There's always a 0-0 on the team. So that was your influence. Question, Coach Smith's values sort of endure even beyond NIL. You hear a lot about the Carolina family. What are the things he did on a daily basis? Can you tell a story that sort of was specific to him, sort of instilling those values in the Carolina family? Even now, you see guys come back to town during the summer and things like that. So just curious if you have any stories or anecdotes around that kind of value.
Yeah, well, thanks for the question. So the question is kind of, how was the Carolina family built or maintained through what Coach Smith did?
That's why you're a commentator. You said a lot better than I did.
I don't know about that. But I think what I would tell you is, think about your closest friends. Think about if you're close with your family or with your parents or a grandparent or a colleague. Think about the qualities that they represent to you. Kindness, thoughtfulness, respect, the unsolicited nice things that they do for you. The thoughtfulness and how they're thinking about who you are, big picture, not just in the single dimension. That was Coach Smith. And that was Coach Smith's, that was his staff, that was the office staff, that was what he expected to be reciprocated. And that's just who he was. And so when you think about those relationships that you have in your lives, you want to be back around those relationships, I would think. And so that's why we come back, because those are substantive relationships. And the other thing is, it happens when you're 18, 19, 20, 21 years old. So those are so formative years and such formative years. And so when you have really great experience, all that we've just talked about in those times, if you have the opportunity to come back to that, I think most people would choose to do that. Does that make sense? Yeah. Great. Okay. Thank you. Yes. Bob.
I do remember 1993, and I've heard you talk about George Lynch and his great leadership when you played. Does Carolina have any of those kind of leaders now? And maybe who are some of the other great leaders we've had?
Well, no, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that because the answer is no. I see that little red light that's recording me right now. Whose is that, by the way? Is that like nobody's going to watch this?
It's YouTube.
It's YouTube? Oh my Lord. Seriously? No, but does it get posted on YouTube like tomorrow I can go on and see this?
Yes.
Well, I
retract the question.
So I'm glad to know that. I'm actually, no, it's not that. I actually, there's some things that I might share that I would be willing to share to the room that I'm not willing to share with the world. So I'm glad to know that. So if you don't want that,
turn it off.
Okay, I mean, it really doesn't have to do with, I don't mean to be I didn't know that.